Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. Today's episode is about, does fascia hold the secret to emotional relaxation? So come and join me as I dive into the world of fascia and see if I can unlock a little bit of a secret to emotional relaxation. Because fascia, as we all know, is an intricate network of connected tissues, and it weaves its way through our whole bodies. It's long been recognized now as absolutely essential to our physical health. However, it's not yet fully understood from the impact it's having on our emotional well-being. So, what do I mean by that? Emotional stress, as we call it, is something that affects all of us at some point of our lives. And many people consider mental health and emotional health to be intricately linked. But historically, we've considered that as separate from the physical body. And yet we often hear about things like food and mood, and that what we eat physically affects our emotional moods and our mental states. And all kinds of research is coming in to understand why we experience that feeling of being overwhelmed or anxious or just plain stuck. Is it because we're in physical pain, or is it sometimes the case that we're not actually in physical pain, but we are experiencing what can only be described as a sort of emotional depletion? And we all know that traditional approaches in dealing with emotions tend to focus on the mind, on mental techniques, and things like mindfulness or meditation and talk therapies are prescribed to help us cope. But what if there's a crucial missing factor in this, that a wider understanding of fascia can actually help us appreciate at a different level of nuance, a different understanding? Because fascia isn't just a passive structure that wraps muscles and attaches things to each other and kind of exists in the body. Sometimes it's described, certainly traditionally, as a sort of an inert packaging that's between the vessels of our body, between the organs of our body, and between the muscles and the bones. And in actual fact, we now know that it's much more than that. The fascia itself doesn't just provide support and stability to our structure, although that plays an important role in our emotional sense of safety, because it affects our relationship with the ground and how comfortable we are in our bodies. But it's also now understood that the fascia itself, this fabric of our form, is highly sensitive. It's something called proprioceptive. And it's a tissue that is so intimately connected to our nervous system that the research is now showing that there's a different time frame of how we actually sense something to when our nervous system physically recognizes it. And these are really subtle differences in our awareness, but we're beginning to reach a level where we can't leave the fascial matrix out of the discussion of how our energy moves through our body and how we experience our understanding of it. So the word emotion itself means energy in motion. And what's becoming apparent is that that energy in motion through the living tissue resonates through it, moves through it, changes its shape, and plays a vital role in how we can respond to stress, to what we call tension, when we mean, oh, I'm really uptight. And so when we are feeling really emotionally stressed, there are all sorts of physiological changes in the body. And what's now being very clearly understood is that fascia plays a part in those feelings, and that by affecting the fascia, we might be able to help ease and relieve some of the feelings that contribute to emotional stress and anxiety. So let's have a look at that. So if the tissue, for example, becomes tight or restricted or inflamed, it can, because we've had a physical insult or injury, enter a sort of a cycle of pain and anxiety and emotional distress. That's not rocket science. If a kid falls over, they usually scream and they're all upset. And if we fall over as adults, there's often quite severe consequences to that. Now, one way of managing that is to have a very clear relationship with how the body relates to the ground. And integrating micro movements into the fascia gives it this sense of safety and wakes up in it this natural, innate blueprint that is ours of spring loading. And we can actually activate and animate that to improve our ability to bounce, to skip, to spring, to walk with a lightness of step. Now, try this little exercise for yourself while you're listening to me. Deliberately put your face into a frown. Deliberately put your mouth down at the corners and hang your head and slump your body and literally depress and compress your torso. So you're going to notice that your breathing might be a little shorter or restricted. But you start to have a down expression and a down feeling. And if you're walking around, you can drop your arms and stomp and shuffle and feel heavy and downward in your expression. Well, in that moment, all your fascia is required to put your face into that deep scowling expression or hang your shoulders or drop your breastbone towards your hips and slump in your chair or slump in your posture and shuffle your feet. And you will feel a certain level of, let's say, on a happiness scale from 0 to 10. In my case, when I do that, I'm down at the lower end. If unhappy is 0 and happy and bubbly and bouncy is 10. Now, if all you do is lift your breastbone, smile, and open up your face, you're literally changing the organization of the fascial matrix. And everything moves, everything else moving in the fascial architecture of the body. So when you smile like that, I don't know if you noticed that you're breathing slightly differently. And we know that the breath is integrated with the heart, is integrated with how we feel. If we breathe well, we often feel better. But do we necessarily realize that by changing our expression, we're changing our fascia, we're changing our body organization? And if you go out and walk with your shoulders a little bit back, your arms swinging, your torso rotating a little bit, just try it out. It doesn't have to be a special walk. It doesn't have to be an episode of the Ministry of Silly Walks, but it can just give you a kind of a lightness. And something happens emotionally. And what we discover is that just getting up and having a walk around the garden or a little walk up and down your road or just a little back and forth. I actually, if I'm not seen by anybody, play hopscotch just for a couple of minutes. And it can completely disrupt the heavy energy that I might be feeling if I'm emotionally a little bit down and lift my spirits, which of course sends that energy into motion. So the emotion can be released and effective throughout the body. That impacts the nervous system. That impacts how we feel about how we feel. And what if I told you that by releasing this or sort of down, shuffly tight feeling in our fascia, we're actually unlocking a much deeper sense of emotional balance? And science is starting to back up this idea. There's studies now that have shown the state of our fascia can actually be demonstrated to have a profound impact on emotional states. And research has found that people with anxiety and depression tend to have altered fascial patterns in their actual matrix. And it's characterized by increased, sometimes pain and restricted mobility. Now, conversely, certain practices like yoga and micro movement and massage, which often targets fascia, have been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. So let's just have a little look at how our fascia actually influences our emotional states. And the idea is that the fascia has an intimate connection with our nervous system. I mentioned that before. And one of the reasons for that is fascia is richly populated with sensory receptors. It's called a proprioceptive system. Now, what does proprioception mean? Proprio is Latin for one's own, meaning one's own self. You know, me, myself, and I. You, yourself, and you. They, themselves, and them. And so proprioception is perception of self, whichever self you prefer to use in your languaging. Now, however and whomever that is for you, it's a self-sensing awareness. We then scientifically divide proprioception down into interoception, meaning it's internal, and exteroception, meaning it's external. So we have a sort of an outside in and an inside out. And we match that in our understanding of the nervous system with what's called efferent and afferent pathways. But we don't have to go into the technical detail for you to fully appreciate that your fascia, when it's really tight and restricted, so let's say, for example, you were wearing a coat that's too small for you, imagine, and you were fighting to breathe properly because it all made you feel literally uptight, would be the word that you're using. And that sends a message to your brain that something in your body's under threat or in some sort of danger. And that, even at a subtle level, can perpetuate a feeling of anxiety and stress. And this is going to sound like a really silly example, but have you ever worn a jumper or a t-shirt underneath your sweatshirt that's got a label in it that's really irritating you? And you know, it's just a tiny little niggle and it's like scratching away at you. And you don't know what's irritating you, but it's kind of like a constant physical dripping tap. And it's really annoying. And you realize that you're snapping at somebody or you're overreacting to something or you're just not relaxed. Well, what's actually happening is your fascial system is registering an irritation and sending a signal that something's wrong, something's not quite what it could be. I know it sounds crazy, but if you can find the opportunity to take that niggling label out and it all goes away, it all goes into nothingness. You don't go around thinking, oh, I'm really comfortable, I haven't got any labels digging in me. It all just stops. The anxiety and the irritation melts away. Does that make you feel better? Absolutely. Because when your fascia is relaxed and mobile, it can actually glide and shape change really fluently and adapt to whatever movements you need to do. Whether you're making a cup of tea, making a call, going for a walk, whatever's going on, you'll find yourself in a kind of natural, I like calling it attitude of gratitude, because you just feel good about the world, especially if something's happening that you like, which is the sun shining or something good is happening. But what we're kind of discovering here is this a reciprocal thing. Whatever's going on, if you feel emotional stress and anxiety, you change how your body moves. Vice versa, if you can change how your body moves, the question is, can we change and relieve anxiety and stress? And the answer for me is yes. Because what we've discovered is that really subtle micro movements can act as a kind of mini massage in different areas of the body. What do I mean by that? Well, just rubbing your hands together, massaging your fingers really gently, really slowly, just for a small amount of time. And imagine that just by doing that, you can drop your shoulders. You can activate those smile muscles. It doesn't have to be a great big shining grin. It can just be a soft inner Maybe you hear a bird singing. Maybe you just take a moment to feel the breath. Maybe just massaging those fingers, because from a fascial point of view, that's a continuum with the heart. Your arms grew out of the same part of your torso that your heart grew around. And you are actually assisting yourself in relaxing, in being present in taking a moment of now to take a breath. And in that case, by targeting our fascia, we just might be able to unlock a deeper sense of calm that isn't always possible using traditional approaches alone. I'm not saying we don't need traditional approaches, but what I am saying is that experts in the field are beginning to recognize the importance of myofascial coordination and fascia itself as a fabric playing a role in our emotional health, because it's such a key part of the holistic well-being of our whole body. And we talk about the psychology and the interface of the somatic awareness. Soma means body, and psyche means soul. So psychology is the study of the soul. And sometimes we think soul and psyche and body are three different things, or soul, psyche, and soma, if you like. But they're actually so intimately integrated that I think all that's been missing all this time is the recognition that the fascia contains these proprioceptive sensory awareness antennae, and it feels its way around, and it feels how we feel, and we feel how it feels. So in a way, it's all about the feels. And how can we interpret them by understanding the connection between fascia and emotional relaxation? It's complex and it's multifaceted, but it's just simply by recognizing the importance of it in our emotional health is really something that can contribute to relaxation and balance. One of the secrets I have, which I'm really happy to share with you, is I keep a little squash ball or a melt ball from my friend Sue Hitzman, and I just roll it under my feet at my desk. I very rarely have completely still feet. What I find is when I stand up, they're smiling. And I promise you, if your feet are smiling when they touch the ground, you will feel better from ground to crown. Try it out. And P.S. frowning uses a whole load more myofascial pieces in the face than smiling. And smiling is easier to do, and it will lift your spirits, and it will change your fascia about how you feel, and change how you feel about your fascia. Try it out. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave your thoughts and comments below. I always answer them. Don't forget to check out our next video, and do not forget to press the subscribe button so that you're first to hear about anything that we're doing online. Take care. God bless. Lots of love to you.